Gary DePaul with Unlabeled Leadership. Welcome to episode 27. Robynne Orr narrates The Value Effect. The voice talent for this episode is phenomenal. With that, let's get started. Robynne is not just an architect, she's a voiceover talent, meaning she narrates nonfiction books. Of course, you could narrate fiction books, but for her, she does technical books as well as other nonfiction books. And full disclosure, Robynne narrated my book, What the Heck is Leadership and Why Should I Care? As you listen to this episode, I think you'll quickly realize why I selected Robynne to narrate my book. I think you'll also pick up that Robynne is just a delightful person to talk with. It's clear to me she cares about the people she works with, and she cares about the people in her life. I've never met Robynne in person, never met her during a Zoom call, but I suspect that if I was talking with her in a room, I would feel like the most important person in the room, and I think she would have that effect on just about anybody. As you listen to her stories, I think you'll pick up on that as well. Part 1, Revisiting Expectations of Others. When we work at a company, we have different expectations for different people. Our expectations differ for our boss, our peers, our reports, if we have direct reports, our customers, etc. But what if you rethought about your expectations of others holistically and differently? But more importantly, have you really spent time reflecting on what we expect of other people? Make it explicit. Well, Robynne has, and she shares a fascinating story of how she did that. Here's Robynne.
Well, in terms of something that really kind of impacted me and has stayed with me for actually many years, I once had a situation where two very good friends of mine, were dating, and they met through me, and I was having I was happy for them. It was great that they kind of found each other, but I was having some issues in that I felt like one of them was not like the connection and the friendship that we had had wasn't there, and I was really struggling with that, and it was really hurting me. Kind of a delicate balance when you're happy for two people, they're, finding each other, but yet you have a separate relationship with each of them, and one of them is not the relationship that you typically had had. I struggled with that a lot. The other friend said to me that I expected too much from people. I expected too much from my friends, and so that's why when things went wrong, I was so disappointed and it hurt me so deeply. It took me a while of really just kind of reflecting on that. To be honest, that really freed me, because when I was able to understand and accept that that really was a truth about who I am, because I care really deeply. I suppose I'm a pretty sensitive person, even though I have maybe a tough exterior. It freed me, it released me, and I was able to accept the dynamics of the new relationship. It really impacted the way that I actually interacted and viewed everybody within my life. With my close friends, I no longer expected anything. I no longer anticipated anything. So I was never ever disappointed again. And I know that maybe sounds strange,
No,
but
that's really powerful, actually, what you're saying. The way I see this is that previously you have high expectations, like you just said, that your friend pointed out. But what's happened is that you've lowered those expectations and decreased the amount of interpretation, if that makes sense, from what's going on around you. That actually helps with not only lowering your expectations, but decreases the amount of that you attribute to other people.
absolutely. And for me, how I have actually taken it, and even particularly for people who are closest to me, is that I accept you as you are no matter what. I don't know if that kind of sounds confusing, but because I expect nothing, I can accept just who you are, and or I can accept anything that comes our way. And, I'm always pleasantly surprised. I'm always giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm always understanding that, there are dynamics that are going on and saying that, okay, well, I don't think that you're coming from a position of trying to hurt me, or I don't think you're coming from, you're doing the best that you can. It was really quite freeing. And for me, I feel like it has enabled me to love and accept people even more because there are no expectations, and I accept you and wish the best for you and want to pour as much as I can in. There's never, ever, ever a sense of disappointment, like, how could you do this to me? Or how could you? Because I didn't expect you to.
Yeah, that does make sense. And there's a leadership principle that I talk about on the show every so often called believing in others. And it sounds like not only do you accept people for who they are and how they act, but don't have preconceived expectations, but you also have beliefs that people are putting their best foot forward. They're not out to get you. They're not trying to conceive or have negative ideas about what's going on. And in a sense, when you start believing in people that way, it does release you at a different level.
Exactly. Exactly. So even in situations where I find challenging and where I perceive maybe something could have been done better or, in a different way, for me, it's translated that I look to that person and say, well, okay, where are they coming from? How maybe have they been hurt, or what have their experiences been that has kind of guided them to take this path and this course? Again, for me, it's just been very freeing because I don't hold anything in or against people as much, nearly as much as I used to. And so my interactions with people can be much more positive. I would say, in a sense, much more empathetic. And I think, at least on my part, more genuine.
Part two, the behavioral thread of expressing value. In episode 2, I talk about believing in others, which is one of the 7 principles of leadership. Like the other leadership principles, believing in others sounds simple and, common sense. But it's not always practiced, and it's not as clear what believing in others means. That's why I like to call these principles overt secrets. The meaning seems obvious, but the application is a little bit more challenging. In this story, Robyn describes something that really falls under this principle, believing in others. It's a great illustration of this principle. Here's Robyn.
A number of years ago, I worked at an architectural firm in Philadelphia. I guess there's not kind of one big thing or one person who did something, but it was more a consistent behavior among each of the managers that I worked with, whether kind of staff managers or project managers or even principals of the firm. There was just this consistent behavior that stood out to me and really just caught my attention. And I have always tried to model that behavior. And so basically, it was whenever I had an issue, whenever I had a question, whenever I had needed something to reach out to them, as I approached, they always, to a person, stopped what they were doing, turned to me, and gave me their full attention. I try and think back now about why that was so remarkable, but it was just so remarkable that my manager, in terms of personnel, my project leaders, and even principals, who are busy running the firm, bringing in jobs, would take the time to just stop and focus and never kind of say, "Can you come back in 10 minutes?" Or, I mean, I'm sure maybe once or twice that might have happened.
Mm.
But, just always made me feel like when I came to them and I needed them, I got their full attention, not distracted. They focused in on what we were talking about and they were present. And then when we were done, they went back to what they were doing. And that struck me and has always stayed with me because it made me feel like I was not a burden. I was not imposing. What I had to say, my interaction or my input or my question meant something. And that made me feel like a truly valued member of their team. And what stood out as well is that it was to a person, no matter who it was like it was consistent. And I always wondered if that was part of their managerial training, but it always impressed me. And I've always tried to kind of live up to that model as I have grown and developed within my career. Another point that I also really appreciated from that firm was that whenever we had a big presentation or even just, something kind of meaningful that happened on projects, they would take the initiative to come to us and say, thank you for that all-nighter that you pulled, or, thank you for that late night, or this is what happened with that meeting, and, this is where we are. It wasn't that it was kind of in passing, or I had to go and ask, so how did that meeting go? But they were taking the initiative to keep me, and I presume the rest of the team, clued in on what was going on, what the updates were, what the reaction to our collective work was. I just felt it was so proactive. It made me feel so valued as a part of that team member and as a part of the firm. I really appreciated that, and I've always tried to carry that through, particularly when somebody approaches me to put down what I'm doing and to try and focus in on them, and be present and just completely give them all of my attention.
Would you say, I'm going to guess that you would, that they were genuine in how they gave you attention, their full attention, and how they expressed their gratitude?
Absolutely. I mean, unless I'm dead wrong, but I felt it was genuine. As I said, I try and look back at my other firms or work history prior to that, and it's not like anyone ever, made me feel like I was bothering them. There was just something about this interaction that just it stood out to me, and it stood out to me each time it happened, that they put pens down, they turned away from the computer, papers were down, and it was just looking me in the eye, focused completely on whatever we were discussing in that moment.
No smartphones.
Nope,
No,
no, nothing.
that is incredible. I've worked on my resume just now, and I think I'm going to apply to that architectural firm. I think that's fantastic. Just the simple thing of recognizing the work that people are doing and thanking them it goes a long ways.
It does. It does. I think that was also the one firm, or the first firm, where literally they thanked me for working. And the first time I heard it, I was like, well, what do you mean? You're paying me to do this work. Why are you
Yes.
thanking me? But yes, it was, thank you for working late. Thank you for giving this to me. Thank you for, and there was just I don't know if it's gratitude, or I felt so valued there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've had a VP that I reported to who said, "Well, why should I thank anyone? That's what they're paid for, you know?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And did not get wasn't in tune to how having not thanking people and not showing that gratitude, it wasn't helpful, but at the same time he was being genuine because he didn't realize the impact that he was having on other people.
Correct, correct. I mean, that really, for me, of course, you're there to do to do a job well, but that really makes the difference between an engaged and invested member of your team and someone who's just there doing a job.
Part 3, modeling the values that we appreciate. Part of leadership involves changing the environment around you, even changing the culture. When we're part of an organization, or more specifically in this case, a team, you do have a lot of influence with how a team interacts. Robynne shares how she influences. Again, here's Robynne.
I suppose my big takeaway from these experiences are, really to try and model the behavior that made me feel good, made me feel valued, made me feel invested, wherever I am. Actually, well, am I able to mention the book?
Yeah. Oh, yes, you can mention the book.
What the heck is leadership? There was a part in that book that really struck me, and I believe it was the section where you were discussing a team of leaders. there was a hierarchy, there was a manager, but the team was built of leaders and how they supported each other, and there was the back and forth. And I mean, that really stood out to me because that is who I want to be. I just don't want to be a part of a team or just somebody there who's a member. I want to be a leader, no matter what stage or position I'm in, really pushing myself and my teammates, really supporting my teammates, and hopefully in turn they would support me, and to kind of create the environment that you want. Don't let people dictate how you behave. You behave the way that you would like to see, whether it's in your environment, whether it's your team, or whether it's in your manager. If you model the behavior for them to see how they should behave towards you. It's easy to give up. It's easy to get bitter. It's easy to complain. I think setting the trend and setting expectation actually for how you want to be treated by treating others is probably one of my big takeaways. And just one other point, someone who I worked with once said, don't assume what people know. Each of us come to our interactions with our own history, with our own experiences. And just because you know something, that doesn't mean that somebody else is going to know it. And just because someone knows something doesn't mean that you're going to know it. And I think that's a great approach to take to people, not to belittle, not to assume that you are better than or your experiences are better than, but to really kind of listen, to understand, and to be open and supportive. Those are probably my two takeaways.
I really like that, especially the part about making assumptions. We tend to attribute what other people know, how other people are feeling, why they're doing what they're doing. And your message is that people should not make assumptions, try to make the assumptions, look at the behaviors that are going on, and then inquire. Don't assume that someone knows something, ask them. Well, before I go on, are you familiar with, and don't make those types of assumptions.
Exactly, exactly. And it's funny, I mean, I think after so many years, my first profession is in architecture. My second is as a voiceover talent. But
Yes.
after so many years in architecture, I actually now have the confidence because I know a lot. So I now have the confidence to say, well, hold on, what is that? Or explain this or dig deeper here, because I am not held back by, oh my gosh, are they going to think that I don't know what I'm doing? Because I know what I'm doing, which I suppose obviously comes with experience. You have value, you can contribute, and you can still not know something because that's how you learn and grow with each new project or each new task. I have that confidence and I try and extend that grace to others. I just try and model kind of what I would love to see and how I would like to be treated.
Yeah. And I think it's so true that when people show respect, especially for other people who are maybe new and coming in, even interns,
Yes.
then that builds up confidence. In a sense, gives permission for people to speak up, to express their views without fear of being chastised or criticized unfairly, but knowing that you're going to be taken seriously.
Absolutely. And I think that also ties back, I mean, for me, I think confidence is a huge item, and that ties back to the, not kind of judging people or not expecting anybody from someone, trying to be as open and supportive as possible. Because if someone feels engaged and invested and you build them up and they have confidence, their whole attitude changes, their approach to things changes. And for me, I would prefer for a question to be asked than you go down the road or you go down a path where decisions are made and questions are not asked because somebody was afraid. Somebody didn't want to seem embarrassed or like they were less than, or, they weren't right for the position. So for me, building up that confidence to ask the question, and whether it's within the group or kind of aside, if you feel comfortable that you won't be judged, you won't be kind of sidelined, and that you'll still have the opportunities, for me, I think that makes a better team and a better, work environment.
My thanks to Robynne Orr. If you'd like to learn more about Robynne, go to the show notes. You'll find links there If you have a comment or question, go to unlabelleadership.com, click the message icon, and you can leave a voicemail up to 1 minute with a question or comment. Maybe I'll play it on the air. My thanks to listeners who support this show. And I have to say it again, more importantly, thank you for listening. Until next time, lead on.